Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Thursday, May 20th, 2021, and today we're going to be taking a look at the United States House elections in 2022, given the 2020 or 2010 Census United States House of Representatives map, and why this shows just truly how poor of a position the Democratic Party is in the 2022 midterm elections when it comes down to the House. So looking at the Sabato's Crystal Ball article, it is written by Kyle Kondik, and he says that if the Democrats would have a tough slog even without redistricting, essentially telling us that without this entire census process, if the 2020 census had not occurred, the 2022 map, which the Democratic Party won in both 2018 and 2020, it would still be difficult and a challenge for the Democrats to retain their House majority. And that's just how it is. That's how it always has been for the incumbent party. And the fact remains, the 2020 House election results were far from good. They were not necessarily anything the Democratic Party could flaunt other than the fact that they did retain the majority. But beyond that, they didn't really expand their majority in a single district besides Georgia's 7th. Now, there were two pickups in North Carolina, but that was a forced two pickups from court-ordered redistricting, which means that they were givens. They were won by 25 plus points in both of the districts, so they weren't exactly monumental flips because they were forced and given by the state itself. But for Georgia's 7th, that was the only district that flipped, largely because a Republican was retiring. Had that not occurred, the Republicans probably would have retained it, and the Democrats would have been down an additional seat. But now they are at 222 to the Republicans' 213. So rather than start their 2022 House predictions, largely because we don't have the map, so it wouldn't necessarily make sense to do that, they decided to go ahead and tell us what they would rate each district if the map had not changed. And it seems like a waste of time. But considering that we don't know exactly what type of year 2022 is going to be, whether it's a red wave year in both the House or the Senate, or a blue wave year in the Senate but not in the House, or, different variations, because we don't have that clear distinction, this provides a little bit more context. And I've been saying for the longest time that the Democratic Party is going to be screwed over in the House of Representatives. It's because of redistricting, and it's also because of a number of other factors. And this Sabato's Crystal Ball shows us truly how detrimental the House elections will be for Democrats, at least as it stands currently. Because this map that I'm going to show you is from Tossup Report on Twitter. That's the actual handle. It's at Tossup Report. I believe his name is Nick. I've seen his tweets a few times. I believe he made the map. If he didn't make the map, then I apologize to whoever did make the map, and please let me know in the comment section. But this is a 270 to win map, just based off of the ratings released here by the Crystal Ball. But looking at them alone, at face value, this is not good for Democrats. Looking at this map, the Republicans already start out with 211 seats before redistricting. Democrats are at 203. So I'm at this point where I'm questioning, is this salvageable for Democrats? I saw people mention that this would be something that was an attainable type of House majority if the Democrats were to play their cards right. And they're correct about that. There's a reason why the House majority isn't already decided. But then again, the Democratic Party House majority wasn't decided for a very large amount of time. And even some pundits had not said the Democratic Party will have enough seats in their column without toss-ups to win back the House majority. What happened in 2018 was the Democratic Party won over so many toss-up districts. They won the majority of the toss-up districts. They won a few Republican-favored districts, even went so far as winning Oklahoma's 5th district, which was rated as safe for the GOP. So looking at our 2018 House map, the Democratic Party did phenomenal. They won 235 seats. They gained 40 seats from the GOP, and the Republicans dipped below 200 seats. Well, then, like I had mentioned in the video in the beginning, fast forward to 2020, Republicans pick up 15. They flip 15 seats from the Democrats or from independent libertarian, whatever it is, with Justin Amash. Not entirely sure how he characterized himself by the time he had left office, but looking at the net gain of 12, what a phenomenal number for the GOP. And they would continue that into 2022, assuming that the districts do not change, because there is this expectation that the number of seats that the incumbent party holds decreases with the incumbent president. And I don't think that Joe Biden is necessarily different. I don't think Joe Biden is at this point where, he is in a position where his popularity being plus 14, plus 12, plus 11 is enough to overcome the historical dominance and the historical gains for the opposition party. And while I don't think 2022 is automatically this red wave year, winning back the House doesn't need a red wave. As this map shows, the Republicans would already have the advantage without redistricting. And what I'm going to show you, if you're a Democrat out here, is going to make you very worried. Because what happened in 2020 wasn't just the Democratic Party falling behind in the House of Representatives. Yes, they have a trifecta. But because they have not passed anything in terms of gerrymandering, because, the filibuster is still in place, because we haven't seen the Supreme Court make things such as gerrymandering illegal, trying to avoid that situation in all cases possible, essentially, across this trifecta were a number of losses that need to be pointed out. Because when you're looking at who controls the redistricting process, look at all of that red. The only states where Democrats have full control of this redistricting process, you have a handful. You have Maryland, my home state. You have Massachusetts, soon to be another state that I live in. You have Rhode Island, New York. These liberal states make sense. You have Illinois. You have New Mexico. You have Nevada. You have Oregon. All states that voted for Joe Biden in the 2020 election. Republicans, however, they have a few other states, a few other swing states, large states, Texas, Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, Ohio, Iowa. They have full control, and now they have New Hampshire. And New Hampshire is going to be a little bit difficult to draw, but looking at the map itself, a lot more red than there is blue. In addition, the states that are in green have independent redistricting commissions, which means that if everything was to go to plan, things would be decided fairly. Which means that Democrats, even if they won the state, for example, California, Virginia, Arizona, Colorado, Michigan, Washington, states with large amounts of electoral votes, large amounts of districts, California being the most, have independent redistricting commissions, which means that they are going to try to take an apolitical point of view and draw these districts. Now that's good, but the reason why that's detrimental for Democrats is because the Democratic Party in many of these states, and there are a few Republican states with independent commissions, Idaho and Montana, but beyond that, the rest of those states had voted for Joe Biden. And the reason why many of these states did opt in for this measure is to try to push other states to follow suit. That way, redistricting will not be necessarily a partisan effort, but rather one done by an independent commission. But because it was done largely in Democratic states, the majority of the states with commissions are Democratic states, the Democratic Party, in essence, did screw themselves over, because this is something that the Republican states did not follow through with. Republicans have full control over Texas. They are going to gerrymander that state into oblivion. They have full control over Florida. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you that Democrats aren't going to do the same in New York. Take a look at my home state of Maryland's congressional districts. Democrats do partisan districting too. It makes sense because, typically speaking, these parties have the mindset of fighting fire with fire. But the reality is there's an unequal balance here where the Republicans have the majority of control. And that's what's going to ultimately doom the Democrats in 2022 in the House elections. It has no real impact on the Senate elections for obvious reasons. Those are statewide elections. But if the energy is on the Republican side in the House, it might translate into a little bit more support in the United States Senate. And 2018 had some very close races, as did 2020. Every single thing matters. And looking at the ratings themselves beyond just the lean Republican, the likely Republican, the solid Republican, and the same for the Democrats. The toss-up states, or toss-up districts, the 21 here that are toss-ups, do make a difference. Look at the Republican column for toss-up. You have 2 seats, Mike Garcia, which was actually a Democratic seat in 2018, and Young Kim, California's 39th district, which was also a toss-up seat in the 2018 elections, also won by a Democrat. These are 2 seats now that Republicans won back in 2020 that are considered to be toss-up. And many districts won by Republicans back in 2018 are now in the lean Republican column or the likely Republican column. But when you look down at the Democratic column, what do you notice? Less likely Democratic seats than lean Democratic seats, and more toss-up Democratic seats than lean Democratic seats. 19 out of the 21 toss-up seats are from the Democratic districts. They are from areas where you are looking at, a number of incumbents either running for statewide office, so they are not running. In addition, you have vulnerable Democrats. So when you have 19 vulnerable Democrats and you have 2 vulnerable Republicans, you can see exactly why there is this imbalance. In order for Republicans to win back House control on this map, all they would need is 8 out of those 19 Democratic districts. 8 out of the 19, and they would take control. I mean, you need 218 for control in a fully scaled House of Representatives. So what they would need is 219. But, to get to 218, they would only need 7. But for that little bit of buffer, in case of a 1 vacancy, you would be able to see them at 219. But at the end of the day, it just points out how much the Republicans actually have in terms of chances and opportunities. And this is based off of the old map, the map that now favors Democrats as 2018 and 2020 shows, which means Republicans are going to take the election results from 2020 and try to draw them into ways that makes it even more difficult for Democrats to win. And not that the Democrats won't try to do the same to the Republicans, but the point is that there's a disproportionate amount of control to the GOP compared to the Democrats. But as Donald Trump said, and the Democratic Party does like avoiding using this because it is something that was proved to be very detrimental to them in terms of the Supreme Court, but elections have consequences. And while the Democrats did win a trifecta, which is great at face value, there were a number of losses that were swept under the rug largely because of this trifecta victory that need to be acknowledged, which is why, honestly speaking, the Democratic Party should not go too optimistic into 2022. The midterm elections are always abysmal. 2010 can show you this. The 2 years after Barack Obama and the Democrats won 250 plus House seats, nearly 60 seats in the Senate. You heard me correctly. Go look at the 2008 Senate election results. It was 59-41 for Democrats in the Senate, with the Democratic Party winning 365 electoral votes, 67% of the entire electoral college. But then the House 2 years later, 63 seats for the GOP. What I think that we might see at the end of 2022 based off of just this map alone is maybe a 2012 map where the Democrats are hovering around 200 and the Republicans are around 233. But it could be even worse than this because this is a map that's realistic based off of our current congressional districts. Assuming that they don't change, the Democrats are already at a disadvantage to lose the House majority. I mean, seriously speaking, looking at the numbers alone, the Democrats were 4 districts away from losing the House majority. 2020 could have been a year where the Democratic Party won back control of the Senate, well, technically 2021, but won back control of the Senate, and then won the presidency, but lost control of the House. That was a possibility. Based off the numbers we're seeing, that could have happened. And what also should worry Democrats that I haven't pointed out yet is the sheer amount of toss-up races won by the GOP in 2020. Get this, the Democratic Party won 0 toss-up districts. When you have all of these districts ranging from Virginia's 5th district ranging all the way up to Arizona's 6th, the GOP won every single one. Did the Democrats win any of the safe Republican districts? Absolutely not. Did they win any of the lean Republican districts? Absolutely not. The Democratic Party won nothing in 2020 that was competitive in the House. In fact, looking at some of these Democrats expected to win easily columns, you might notice that the Democratic Party is only winning by narrow amounts in some of these districts. Arizona's 2nd by 10 points instead of 30. California's 3rd, 9 points instead of 30. You're looking around 6 points instead of 30. Some of these in the lean Democratic column were won by larger margins, 28, 25. Like I said in the beginning, 7 points in California's 45th, 6 points in California's 49th. This year was expected to be very good for Democrats. It ended up being exceptionally close. States that weren't decided until later on in the evening, and it was a very poor performance. Our districts that weren't decided later on into the evening, and it was a very, very poor performance for the GOP, especially looking at the toss-ups column, which means that if the 2020 election repeats itself, which Democrats might say and look at that at face value and say, of course you would want to repeat that. No, you wouldn't. Because based off this toss-up column, you're talking about adding in an additional 19 seats to the GOP and keeping the 2 that they have currently, which would put the Republicans at around, I believe, 231. So that is not good for Democrats. 231 to 203 would be a very poor performance, but it's something that is within the realm of possibility even before redistricting. And after the census reapportionment, we also noticed that some of these states do change in terms of electoral count, which means that they are going to hold a little bit more weight or a little bit less weight. It really all depends. If you want to actually see, I'm going to go ahead really quickly and talk about the states that are increasing, because you will see a new district added in, which means another one will have to be taken out. Another district will have to, the entire map needs to be redrawn. For some of these states that are staying the same, you'll see a very similar map, and those decreasing, you'll see a state have to reduce the number of congressional districts, which means that you're going to see a reduction of one district. If a state is controlled by Republicans, it'll be a targeted Democratic district. If it's a state controlled by Democrats, it'll be a targeted Republican district. But the point and the main takeaway here is that we are looking at a map with a number of changes, which means a number of new maps in New York, 28, Pennsylvania 19, Ohio 17, Michigan 15, Illinois 19, North Carolina 16, Florida 30, Texas 40, California 54, Colorado 10. Double-digit states with a lot of districts that will determine partisan control solely by that alone. But Democrats should not even be optimistic based off of our current congressional districts. And I think that that is the true warning for Democrats that 2022 might be bad, which means they need to start organizing, they need to start campaigning, start ramping up good candidates now. Because this map alone shows truly how poor of a position the Democratic Party is, which means they need to fight for everything, continuing on from this point. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2022 midterm election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow. Later today.